Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Ojama deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this one because this was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Tyler, and this is a really awesome deck that focuses around locking down your opponent's board where they can't summon monsters, which is a very interesting strategy for a deck to have. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below, just like Tyler did, for all those awesome rewards like getting your name in the description of every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your Patreon along with test hands. And definitely give Tyler some love down in the comments down below. So without further ado guys, let's get straight on into this. So first off, you're going to be playing 2 copies of Ojama Yellow. Ojama Yellow is a key card in this deck, just like his brothers Ojama Green and Ojama Black. So you got to play 2 of each of these because they're actually searchable off your copy of Ojamagic. So these cards are very, very pivotal for the deck. We then play 2 copies of Ojama Red. This card is an insanely powerful card that has the ability that whenever it's normal summoned to your field, you can special summon up to 4 other Ojama monsters from your hand, which is an absolutely crazy effect that can help you out with Link plays, help you out with XZ plays, and can help you just overall swarm the board for all sorts of crazy cool plays. We then play 2 copies of Ojama Pink. I've bumped Ojama Pink down to 2 in this particular build because this is very fusion focused. And so what we do with this card is if this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, then you can activate this effect to each player draws a card and then each player discards a card. And if you discarded an Ojama card, then you can choose one of your opponent's unused monster zones and it cannot be used until the end of your opponent's turn. So this card actually helps us out with the lockdown aspect of the deck by using this card, Ojama King, Ojama Knight, and even cards like Ground Collapse. You can totally lock your opponent down where they can't summon monsters to their side of the field, except in the extra monster zone, because those are considered community zones where you can actually pick one or the other and they don't count for either player. So you have to only be able to lock down the main monster zones. We then play 3 copies of Ojama Blue to round out the Ojama monsters. This card is really, really good for this deck as well. This card is a great searcher because when this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can add 2 Ojama cards from your deck to your hand, which this deck has a lot of different Ojama cards that you can add from deck to hand. So this card comes in very handy, especially just attacking into an opponent's monster. You will take a little bit of damage, but you do get some searches, which helps out the deck a lot to get a bunch of searches off this card. We then play for the last 3 monsters. We're just playing 3 copies of Rescue Cat besides the Ojama monsters. This card is basically here because it lets you send this card from your side of the field to the graveyard, special summon 2 level 3 or lower beast type monsters from your deck to your side of the field, which helps out a lot to be able to get 2 additional beast monsters on your side of the field because all of your Ojamas are actually beasts. So it can get you out your fusion materials, it can get you out your copies of your Ojama Blues, it can just get out some really powerful cards on your side of the field to go into all sorts of really good plays. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Terraforming because we play some really good field spells in here, and so we need to use Terraforming to get to those field spells. We play 2 copies of Fusion Recycling Plant. Fusion Recycling Plant helps us search our polymerization and also helps us discard cards from the hand. You can once per turn discard a card to add a polymerization from your deck or graveyard to your hand, and then once per turn during the end phase, you can target 1 monster in your graveyard that was used as a fusion material for a fusion summon this turn and add that target back to your hand, which is a really good effect just to be able to grab those cards back from the graveyard and put them back in your hand so you can go into additional plays on following turns. We then play 3 copies of Ojama Country. This card is awesome. It has Ojama Lime on it, and hopefully eventually we'll get Ojama Lime. But what this card does is basically once per turn you can send an Ojama card from your hand to the graveyard, special summon an Ojama monster from your graveyard, and then while you control face of Ojama monster, switch the original attack of all monsters on the field. So you switch the attack and defense, so basically it's shield and sword as long as you have an Ojama monster on your side of the field, which is really helpful because a lot of our Ojama fusions have 0 attack and really big defense like 3,000 defense points and 2,500 defense points for Ojama Knight. And so you want to flip those attack and defense points so you can actually get a little bit more of a push for game, which is helpful for this deck. We then play 3 copies of Polymerization because this is a fusion-based deck that we're actually using to be able to go into our Ojama King and our Ojama Knight to lock down the opponent. We play 3 copies of one of the most important cards in the entire deck, which is Ojama. Ojama is an insanely powerful card because if this card is sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you get to add 1 Ojama green, yellow, and black from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect because it goes off with cards like Fusion Recycling Plant. It goes off when you discard it with cards like your Ojama Pink and a lot of other cards. It just is a really good card to be able to discard to the graveyard to be able to grab 3 additional cards. As long as you open up like a Fusion Recycling Plan in this deck, you're usually going to have a really good duel. We then play 3 copies of Obedience School. Obedience School is a very interesting card for this deck. It's what I chose to change out the Ojama with. Ojama is a good card, but I felt like the copies of my Obedience School helped out a lot more because what this card actually does for the deck is it lets you special summon to your side of the field if you control no monsters, 3 level 2 or lower effect beast monsters, but for the rest of the turn you can't special summon anything but beast and destroy them during the end phase. But this card helps you go into a lot of different awesome XYZ plays and even summon out cards like your copies of your Melfi monsters that help out in the deck and your copies of your number 64 Ronin Raccoon. This card is really, really good in the deck to be able to go into all sorts of really good plays because it doesn't involve a normal summon, but you have to special summon out a copy of Ojama Pink, Red, and Blue because they have to be effect monsters to use this card. We then play 3 copies of Ground Collapse. Ground Collapse is just a really good card in this deck because you're basically using this card to be able to combo with Ojama King and Ojama Knight to be able to make this card a lock on your opponent where they cannot use their main monster zones, which is a really awesome strategy to actually do because when they realize that all 5 of their zones are locked down, a lot of times players end up scooping unless they're playing fusion-based decks, which they can actually fusion summon into the extra monster zone. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Trap Trick. Trap Trick is a very important card for this deck because this card is going to let us get into one of our best cards in the entire deck, and that is going to be 3 copies of Necrofusion. Necrofusion is a very powerful card in this deck that you usually want to open up with a copy of, like if you can open up a copy, the main strategy is opening up a copy of either Trap Trick and a copy of Necrofusion, either or. Opening up a copy of Ojama and a copy of Fusion Recycling Plant. If you do that, you're pretty much going to be fine to go in for any of your plays because you're going to get a total setup to lock your opponent's entire field down, which you guys will definitely see in the test hands that are coming to the channel. But this card is a really good card because it basically lets you banish cards from your graveyard to create a fusion summon, which is really, really cool because if you already fusion summon it on the previous turn and you set this card on your side of the field, you can banish the cards from your graveyard face down to be able to go into any fusion monster that you want to in your extra deck, which is really helpful, and it helps out the deck a lot because you're going to go into your Ojama King during your turn and you can make a second Ojama King on your opponent's turn by using this card in the deck. Trap Trick lets you copy it by banishing another copy of your Necrofusion from the deck. You can then set one to your side of the field and it can be activated the same turn it's set, which helps out the deck a lot. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Ojama King. This card has the ability that when this card is fusion summoned, you can select up to 3 of your opponent's monster card zones, and as long as this card remains face up on the field, they cannot be used. So it can lock down 3 zones on their side of the field, which is a really awesome strategy for the deck to have, to just slowly lock them down where they can summon less and less monsters. This deck really is awesome up against any Link deck because it can lock down entire Link strategies by locking down zones that Link monsters point to, which is really awesome. We then play 2 copies of Ojama Knight. Ojama Knight locks down 2 zones where King locks down 3. Where this card is really helpful is that it requires just any 2 Ojama monsters where your copy of Ojama King specifically requires your Ojama Green, Yellow, and Black. Ojama Knight is generic where it just needs 2 Ojama monsters to fusion summon into this card. We then play a single copy of Ojama Emperor. Ojama Emperor is an insanely powerful card, especially when you have your copy of your Ojama Country on your side of the field, because it has the ability that while Ojama Country is in the field spell zone, it gains 3,000 attack points, and also it cannot be destroyed by card effects, and your opponent takes any battle damage you would have taken from attacks involving this card instead of you. And you can also target 1 non-Link Ojama monster in your graveyard and special summon it for the rest of the turn. You can't special summon for the extra deck except for fusion monsters. which is totally fine, because a lot of the times you're going to be special summoning from the graveyard a copy of Ojama Blue to be able to attack your opponent with, and sometimes you will actually bring back your copies of your Ojama King and your Ojama Knight, so you can go them for additional plays. So this card is very helpful to get a lot of different cards on your side of the field. It does require 3 monsters to summon it that are Beast Ojama monsters, but usually it really counts for 2, because you're going to revive one of those monsters back from the graveyard. We then play the same copy of Yugioh, because sometimes we really need to draw on this deck, and this card just requires 3 monsters, or 4 monsters with different names to be able to get that draw 4 effect and put 3 back on the bottom of the deck. So this card's really helpful. One copy of Access Code, because it's going to give us additional pops, and this card is really good in the deck to be able to make and be able to pop cards on the field. I really love this card in this deck, and it helps out a lot, but you can use something like a Borreload or a Boral Sword, so you can kind of change it out if you need to. We play a single copy of Unicorn to spin stuff, a copy of Phoenix to pop spells and traps, one copy of IP Masquerade because you can actually make Unicorn during your opponent's turn, Alamirage because you can normal summon your copy of Ojama Pink to your side of the field and then link it away for this, which will get its effect to go off to be able to Dark World Dealings, draw 1, discard 1 from your hand. And this card basically says you just have to have a monster that's normal summon with 1,000 or less attack. And Ojama Pink has 0 attack, so you can really easily use this card. One copy of Joyous Melfi. This card's really good because it lets you detach a material from this card, and then your Melfi monsters can attack directly this turn, which can basically make you a Zeus very, very easily. And during your opponent's turn, quick effect, you can target a Beast XZ monster you control, return that monster to the extra deck, and if you do, special summon 2 level 2 Beast monsters from your graveyard up to the number of materials that that monster had. So if this card still has all its materials, you can just detach them off of this card, or send this card back to the extra deck, and then special summon out 2 copies of Ojama Blue from the graveyard, which helps out the deck a lot. One copy of Sky Cavalry. This is a Beast Warrior, so keep that in mind. This card's very helpful because it can actually out a lot of different cards in the game, so this card's a no-brainer to play in this deck as one copy of Ronin Raccoon. Ronin Raccoon's really helpful too because basically this card lets you detach material and give a token on your side of the field that becomes the highest attack of monster on the field, which is really awesome. If your opponent has a Blue Eyes White Dragon and that monster has the highest attack, you detach a material from this, it special summons a token that has the matching attack points to that Blue Eyes, which is really cool. I really like this card in this deck, and it's a beast, so it's very easy to make. And then we play a single copy of AA Zeus because we play the XZ monsters in here to be able to board wipe if needed. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really, really awesome deck, and I'm really glad that Tyler actually suggested this deck because it is a massively fun deck to play around with. It's not very expensive either to actually pick up the main deck because Ojamas are just naturally cheap because the majority of them have been printed a bunch by this point, and they're very, very fun to play to see if you can actually lock down your opponent. I can't wait for you guys to see test hands of this deck because this deck is an absolute beast of a deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.